The transport shuttle's doors opened with a soft hiss. Hana stepped onto the platform of the Galactic Academy station, clutching a small bag that contained everything she owned. Her heart pounded in her chest as she looked around at the massive structure. The station was enormous, easily the size of a small city. Bright lights reflected off metal walls, and hundreds of beings moved through the corridors in organized chaos. She had dreamed of this moment for years. Earth had only joined the galactic community 15 years ago, and getting accepted to this academy was nearly impossible. Out of billions of humans, only she had made it this year. Her parents had cried with pride when she left. Her brother Daeun had hugged her tight and whispered, "Show them what we're made of." But now, standing alone on the platform, Hana felt very small. A group of massive creatures walked past her. They stood at least 7 feet tall, with thick scales covering their bodies like armor. Their eyes glowed amber, and their claws clicked against the metal floor. One of them bumped into Hana, merely knocking her down. He didn't apologize. Instead, he stopped and stared at her. "What is that?" the creature said to his friends. His voice was deep and rough. Another one leaned down, studying Hana like she was an insect. "I think it's one of those humans. You know, from that little planet they just discovered." The first one laughed. It was not a kind sound. "Is this some kind of joke? Did they send us someone's pet by mistake?" Hana's face burned with embarrassment, but she kept her expression calm. She had expected this. The information packets had warned her that humans were considered weak by galactic standards. She just hadn't expected the mockery to start so quickly. "Excuse me," she said quietly, trying to step around them. The largest one, whose name badge read Taiyang, blocked her path. "Where do you think you're going, little human?" "The pet section is on the lower decks." His friends roared with laughter. Other students stopped to watch. Hana noticed different species in the crowd. Some had crystalline bodies that reflected light like living diamonds. Others seemed to shimmer and shift, their shapes never quite staying the same. All of them were staring at her. A being with a crystalline exoskeleton approached. Her compound eyes focused on Hana with intense scrutiny. "Fascinating," she said in a clinical tone. "Such weak bone density. Minimal natural armor. No claws, no venom, no psionic abilities that I can detect. Tell me, human, how did your species even survive to the space age?" Hana took a deep breath. "We're tougher than we look." The crystalline being tilted her head. Her name badge identified her as Myray. The data suggests otherwise. "Your species has half the muscle density of Rax, 1/3 the neurological processing speed of Quillans, and no natural defenses whatsoever. You are, by every measurable standard, one of the weakest species ever admitted to this academy." "Then I guess the measurements don't tell the whole story," Hana replied. Myray made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. "How charmingly illogical. I look forward to observing your inevitable failure." She walked away, her crystalline body chiming softly with each step. Taiyang leaned closer. "Listen, human. This academy isn't for weaklings. Maybe you should go back to your little planet before you get hurt." He pushed past her, his shoulder hitting her hard enough to make her stumble. Hana steadied herself and continued walking. She could feel dozens of eyes watching her. Whispers followed her through the corridors. "Is that the human? So small. I heard their planet doesn't even have proper predators. How did she even get accepted?" She found her assigned dormitory in Block 7. The room was huge, designed to accommodate different species. Her roommate was already there. The being's form shifted and flowed like liquid, settling into a roughly humanoid shape with 4 arms and gentle features. "Hello," the being said with a kind smile. "I'm Jiwan. You must be my new roommate." "I'm Hana," she replied, grateful to finally meet someone friendly. Jiwan helped her unpack her small bag. "I've never met a human before. You're much smaller than I expected." "I get that a lot today," Hana said with a tired smile. "Don't let the others bother you," Jiwon said, though her tone carried doubt. "I'm sure you have your own strengths." That evening, all new students gathered in the Great Hall for orientation. The room was massive, with a ceiling that displayed a perfect view of the stars outside. Hundreds of students from dozens of species filled the seats. Hana sat alone near the back. An old Vrax warrior stood at the front. His scales were scarred from countless battles, and one eye was replaced with a glowing mechanical implant. His name was Instructor Vexler. "Welcome to the Galactic Academy," he began, his voice carrying easily through the hall. "This is not a place for the weak. This is not a place for those who give up easily. Here, you will be pushed beyond your limits. You will face challenges that would break lesser beings. Only the strongest, the smartest, and the most adaptable will survive." His gaze swept across the room and seemed to pause on Hana. "Some of you look at your classmates and see competition. Good. Some of you look at others and see weakness. Be careful. The galaxy has a way of humbling the arrogant." After orientation, Hana went to the cafeteria. The food dispensers offered hundreds of options for different species. She found the human section and received a small tray with familiar food. As she looked for a place to sit, she realized the problem. Every table was full, and no one made space for her. She finally found an empty corner and sat alone. From across the room, she could hear students talking about her. "That's the human. Can you believe they let her in? I heard humans don't even have a proper military history. Probably some backwater species that got lucky with basic technology." Hana ate her food slowly, keeping her eyes down. She had trained for years for this opportunity. She had studied harder than anyone else on Earth. She had passed every test, every evaluation. But none of that mattered here. Here, she was just a weak alien that didn't belong. After dinner, she walked to the observation deck. The massive window showed the endless expanse of space. Stars stretched out in every direction. Somewhere out there was Earth, her home. Her family dot. She pressed her hand against the cold glass and whispered to herself, "They have no idea what we survived to get here." Behind her, footsteps approached. She turned to see Taiyang and two other Vrax students. "Still here, little human?" Taiyang said. "I thought you'd be crying in your room by now." Hana faced them calmly. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." "We'll see about that," he replied. "Tomorrow the real trials begin. Let's see how long you last." They walked away laughing. Hana turned back to the window. Her reflection stared back at her. She looked small and fragile in her academy uniform. But her eyes were steady. She thought about Earth, about humanity's long history, about everything her species had survived. Ice ages, plagues, wars, extinctions. Humans had faced the end of their world dozens of times and always found a way to continue. These aliens thought she was weak because she was small. They thought humans were nothing special because they had no claws or armor. They had no idea what was coming. Hana smiled at her reflection. "Let them laugh," she whispered. "They'll learn." The alarm woke Hana before dawn. She dressed quickly in the Academy's training uniform and headed to the combat arena. Today would be the first physical evaluation. Her stomach twisted with nervousness, but she pushed the feeling aside. The arena was already full of students when she arrived. The space was huge, with a fighting ring in the center and seats rising up on all sides. Instructor Vexler stood in the ring, his massive form impossible to miss. "Today you learn if you have what it takes to be warriors," he announced. "Combat trials. Each of you will face an opponent. You have 5 minutes to prove yourself." Hana watched as the first matches began. The fights were brutal. Rack students crashed into each other with the force of charging bulls. Quillen students moved with precise, calculated strikes. The Morphids shifted their forms to adapt to their opponents. Every species had natural weapons, natural defenses. Every species except humans. Next match, Vexler called. Hannah of Earth versus Cuban of Rax Prime. Hannah's heart sank. Cuban was easily 3 times her size, with scales like steel plates and claws as long as her fingers. He grinned as she stepped into the ring, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Try not to break too quickly, human," he said. "I want this to be entertaining." The bell rang. Cuban charged forward like a freight train. Hannah tried to dodge, but he was faster than she expected. His arm caught her across the chest and sent her flying. She hit the ground hard. The air knocked from her lungs. The crowd erupted in laughter. She struggled to her feet, gasping for breath. Cuban didn't wait. He grabbed her arm and threw her across the ring. She crashed into the barrier wall, pain exploding through her shoulder. 15 seconds had passed. She tried to stand again, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. Medical drones flew into the ring, their scanners checking her for injuries. "Match over," Vexler announced. "Winner, Cuban." The drones carried Hannah to the infirmary on a floating stretcher. Behind her, she could hear the laughter and mocking comments. 15 seconds. Is that a new record? I told you humans don't belong here. What a waste of an academy spot. The medical staff fixed her injuries quickly. Broken ribs, a dislocated shoulder, and various bruises. The healing technology was amazing, but it couldn't fix her wounded pride. She returned to her dorm that evening feeling defeated, but the trials weren't over. The next day brought tactical simulations. Students were divided into teams of 5 and placed in a virtual environment. They had to navigate a hostile planet, locate an objective, and escape safely. Hannah's team included Taiyang, Myray, and 2 other students she didn't know. "All right, listen up," Taiyang said as soon as the simulation began. "I'll lead. Myray handles strategy. The rest of you follow orders and try not to die." "What about me?" Hannah asked. "You? Just stay out of the way and carry supplies," Taiyang replied. "This needs actual tactical thinking." They moved through the simulated jungle. Hannah studied the environment carefully. She noticed the patterns in the vegetation, the way the ground sloped, the sounds echoing from different directions. Something felt wrong. "Wait," she said. "I think we should take the canyon path on the right. This main trail feels like, did anyone ask for your opinion, human?" Taiyang interrupted. "Stick to carrying supplies like I said." Myray examined her scanner. "The main trail is the most direct route. Efficiency is paramount. But the canyon would let us avoid." Hannah tried again. "Enough," Taiyang snapped. "We're taking the main trail." "That's an order." They continued forward. Hannah followed quietly, but she kept watching the surroundings. Her instincts screamed danger. Then the ambush hit. Simulated enemies poured out from the trees on both sides. The team scrambled for cover, but they were surrounded. Taiyang roared orders. Myray tried to calculate escape routes, but the situation was chaos. They fought their way through by brute force, losing valuable time and resources. When the simulation ended, they had barely passed. Their score was near the bottom. "That was a disaster," Myray said, reviewing the data. "We walked straight into a perfectly placed ambush." "Yeah, well, that's what happens when the simulation is poorly designed." Taiyang grumbled. Hannah said nothing. She knew the canyon path would have worked, but no one wanted to hear it. The endurance challenge came next. A 50-kilometer march through a hostile environment simulator. The conditions changed every 10 kilometers, from extreme heat to freezing cold, from acid rain to sandstorms. Hannah pushed herself harder than she ever had before. Her body wasn't adapted for these conditions. The heat made her dizzy. The cold made her fingers numb. The acid rain stung her skin, even through her protective suit. She made it to kilometer 35 before her body gave out. Her legs buckled, and she collapsed onto the burning sand. Medical drones retrieved her, and she woke up in the infirmary again. Jiwon visited her that evening. Her roommate's expression was filled with pity. "Hana, maybe you should consider transferring to the civilian science track," Jiwon said gently. "There's no shame in it. Not everyone is cut out for the elite divisions. You're smart. You could do well in research." Hana stared at the ceiling. Every muscle in her body ached. Her pride was in tatters. It would be so easy to quit, to accept that she didn't belong here, to go back to Earth with her head down. "No," she said quietly. "What?" "I didn't come here to take the easy path," Hana said, turning to look at Jiwon. "I came here to prove something." "But Hana, look at yourself. You're hurt. Everyone is laughing at you. Is it really worth it?" Hana sat up slowly, wincing at the pain. "Yes, it's worth it." The next few weeks were the worst of Hana's life. She became the Academy's unofficial joke. Students created holographic memes showing her being defeated in increasingly ridiculous ways. Someone programmed the cafeteria screen to show Earth's champion whenever she walked in, followed by footage of her 15-second defeat. Even some instructors seemed disappointed. Professor Kixenol, who taught xenobiology, openly questioned her presence during a lecture. "Class, we have a unique opportunity to study a species with virtually no natural advantages. Miss Hana, would you mind explaining how humans became the dominant species on your planet without claws, venom, armor, or any significant physical capabilities?" The classroom went silent. Everyone turned to look at her. Hana stood up. "We adapted. We learned. We survived." "Fascinating," Kixenol said in a tone that suggested it was anything but. "And yet here, without the specific environment of Earth, you seem remarkably unsuccessful. Perhaps your species' success was merely environmental luck." More laughter. Hana sat down, her face burning. But something strange happened during the next xenobiology class. They were studying a complex parasitic organism that infected multiple species. Professor Kixenol showed images of the organism at different life stages and asked students to identify the pattern. Myrae raised her hand first, as always. She gave a detailed answer about the organism's reproductive cycle. "Close, but incorrect," Kixenol said. Other students tried and failed. Then the professor looked at Hana. "Miss Hana? Any thoughts from Earth's champion?" The sarcasm was thick. Hana studied the images. Something about them was familiar. She remembered reading about similar organisms in Earth's history. Parasites that had nearly wiped out entire populations before humans learned to understand them. "The pattern isn't in the reproductive cycle," she said slowly. "It's in the host selection. The organism doesn't move between species randomly. It targets hosts based on genetic markers that make them susceptible to specific enzymes. Each stage requires a host with a different marker. That's why it looks random, but it's actually highly selective." The classroom went silent. Professor Kixenol stared at her. "That is correct," he said, surprise clear in his voice. "How did you know that?" "Earth had similar parasites," Hana replied. "We learned to study patterns because we had to. Survival depended on understanding things that could kill us." Myrae turned in her seat, her crystalline eyes fixed on Hana. For the first time, there was something other than condescension in her gaze. Curiosity, perhaps. Or confusion. That night, Hana couldn't sleep. She left her dorm and wandered the empty corridors until she found a quiet computer terminal. Using access codes that she shouldn't have been able to obtain, she pulled up restricted files on human history. The screen filled with images. Nuclear wastelands, plague-riddled cities, asteroid impact sites, Ice Age survivors huddled in caves. Humanity's long history of facing extinction and somehow surviving. Her fingers trembled as she read. These aliens thought humans were weak because they were small and soft. They had no idea what Earth had thrown at humanity over millions of years. They didn't know about the challenges that had forced humans to become the most adaptable, most stubborn species on the planet. They think we're weak because we're small, she whispered to the empty room. They don't know we're small because only the survivors made it. She closed the files and returned to her dorm. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. More mockery. More pain. But Hannah wasn't quitting. She was just getting started. The Academy station shook violently at 3 in the morning. Hannah woke instantly, her training kicking in before her mind fully registered what was happening. Alarms blared through the corridors. Red emergency lights flashed. G1 sat up in her bed, her morphic form unstable with panic. What's happening? Hannah was already pulling on her uniform. Hull breach. We need to get to the emergency stations. They ran into the corridor and joined the flood of students rushing toward designated safe zones. But another impact rocked the station. The lights flickered and died. Emergency power kicked in, casting everything in dim red light. An automated voice echoed through the speakers. Critical damage to sectors 7 through 12. Life support compromised. Primary power offline. All personnel proceed to designated emergency zones. Estimated time to rescue, 72 hours. 72 hours. 3 days. The safe zone was packed with frightened students and faculty. Hannah looked around and saw something she never expected to see. The mighty Vrac students looked worried. The confident Quillans appeared uncertain. The adaptable Morphids were struggling to maintain their forms in the unstable environment. Instructor Vexler stood at the center, trying to organize everyone. Stay calm. The emergency systems will maintain basic life support. Help is coming. But within the first hour, problems emerged. The temperature began dropping as the heating systems failed. The Vracs, built for hot climates, started shivering. The Quillan's crystalline bodies began developing small cracks from the temperature fluctuations. The Morphids needed specific atmospheric conditions, and several were already having trouble holding their shapes. Hannah watched everything carefully. Her mind worked through the problems, analyzing, calculating. She had spent years studying survival situations. Earth's harsh history had taught humanity how to survive when systems failed. We need to stabilize the temperature, she said to Instructor Vexler. He looked down at her, surprised she was speaking. The heating systems are damaged beyond our ability to repair. We don't need to repair them, Hannah said. We need to insulate and share body heat. If we reorganize everyone into smaller groups and use emergency blankets to create enclosed spaces, we can maintain warmth. That's actually logical, Myre said from nearby. She had been listening. Over the next hour, Hannah directed students in creating insulated pods using emergency supplies. She knew exactly how to maximize heat retention because humans had survived ice ages using similar principles. But the crisis was far from over. A message came through. Instructor Vexler was trapped in the damaged Sector 10. A structural beam had collapsed on him during the initial impact. He was injured and couldn't move. We need to send a rescue team, Taiyang said. The damage is too severe, Myre calculated. The probability of successfully extracting him is less than 8%, so we just leave him? Taiyang roared. Hannah stepped forward. I can reach him. Everyone turned to stare at her. You? Taiyang said. You couldn't even survive a basic combat trial. The access shaft to Sector 10 is only 18 inches wide, Hannah explained. None of you can fit. But I can. Myre checked her data. She's correct. The maintenance shaft is too narrow for Vrex or Quillen physiology. Even Morphids would struggle to compress sufficiently. It's a death trap, Taiyang said. The sector could collapse completely. Maybe, Hana agreed. But Instructor Vexler saved students during the evacuation. He stayed behind to make sure everyone got out. I'm not leaving him. She grabbed a rescue kit and headed for the shaft entrance before anyone could stop her. The opening was a dark hole in the wall, barely visible in the emergency lighting. Hannah took a deep breath and crawled inside. The shaft was worse than she imagined. The walls were sharp with torn metal. Toxic gas leaked from damaged pipes, making her eyes water. The space was so tight she had to pull herself forward on her elbows. Her breathing echoed in the confined space. Halfway through, the shaft twisted downward at a steep angle. Hana slid forward, unable to stop herself. She crashed into a junction point, her shoulder striking metal. Pain shot through her arm. She lay there for a moment, panting. In the darkness, she could hear strange sounds. Creaking metal. Hissing gas. The station was dying around her. It would be easy to turn back. No one would blame her. She had already done more than anyone expected. But Hannah thought about Earth, about humanity's history of facing impossible situations, about all the times humans had crawled through danger to save others. Firefighters entering burning buildings. Miners trapped underground. Soldiers carrying wounded comrades through hostile territory. Humans didn't give up. That was what made them human. She started moving again. Each meter forward was agony. The gas made her dizzy. Her oxygen levels were dropping. She was hallucinating, seeing her family's faces in the darkness. Almost there, she whispered to herself. Just a little further. Finally, she reached the access panel to Sector 10. She kicked it open and dropped into the damaged compartment. Instructor Vexler lay on the ground, a massive beam across his legs. His eyes widened when he saw her. Hana? You shouldn't be here. It's too dangerous. Yeah, well, dangerous seems to be my specialty, she replied. She examined the beam. It was too heavy to lift directly, but there was a damaged hydraulic system nearby. She worked quickly, connecting emergency power cells to the hydraulic jack. Her hand shook from exhaustion and oxygen deprivation, but she didn't stop. Finally, the jack activated. The beam lifted slowly. Can you move? She asked. Vexler pulled himself free. His legs were badly damaged, but he was alive. How did you? Later, Hana interrupted. We need to reach the manual oxygen override. Sector 17 is losing air. Taiyang and 11 others are trapped there. The override is on the other side of this sector, Vexler said. But the path is blocked. Then I'll find another way. She helped Vexler to the safe zone first, supporting his massive weight with difficulty. Then, despite everyone's protests, she went back into the damaged sectors. The path to the oxygen override was a nightmare. She squeezed through gaps in collapsed walls. She climbed over unstable debris. She held her breath through sections filled with toxic gas. Her body screamed for rest. Her lungs burned. Her vision blurred, but she kept moving. When she finally reached the manual override panel, her fingers were numb and bloody. She had to try 3 times before she could input the activation sequence. Finally, the system responded. Oxygen began flowing back into Sector 17. Hana collapsed against the wall, gasping. She had done it. The journey back was even harder. She barely remembered crawling through the maintenance shafts. At some point, strong hands pulled her out. She looked up to see Taiyang's face. You saved us, he said quietly. Why? Because you needed help, Hana replied. She woke up in the medical bay. Jiwan was sitting beside her bed. You've been unconscious for 6 hours, her roommate said. The rescue ships arrived 2 hours ago. Everyone is safe because of you. Word spread quickly through the station. The human girl who everyone had mocked, who couldn't even survive a basic combat trial, had saved dozens of lives. She had crawled through spaces no one else could reach. She had solved problems when stronger, smarter species had panicked. Taiyang visited her that evening. The massive Vrax warrior looked uncomfortable. I owe you an apology, he said. I mocked you, called you weak. I was wrong. You weren't entirely wrong, Hana replied. I am weak. In a straight fight, you beat me every time. Then how did you do all that? Because being strong isn't the only way to survive, Hana explained. Humans learned that a long time ago. We're not the biggest or the fastest. We don't have claws or armor. But we're stubborn. We adapt. We find solutions when there shouldn't be any. That's what makes us dangerous. Myray appeared in the doorway. I've been analyzing your actions during the crisis. By all logical calculations, you should have failed. The probability of success was less than 3% at multiple points. Math doesn't account for stubbornness, Hana said with a small smile. Clearly, Myray replied. But there was something new in her voice. Respect. That night, the Academy held an emergency assembly. Students gathered in the main hall, still shaken from the crisis. The station commander, an ancient being named Elder Dexmar, addressed them. Today, we faced a crisis that tested us all, he began. Many showed great courage. But I want to recognize one individual in particular. Hana's heart sank. She didn't want attention. Hana of Earth, the commander continued. Please stand. Reluctantly, she stood. Every eye in the hall turned to her. You were mocked when you arrived here, Elder Dexmar said. Dismissed as weak, inferior. But when crisis came, you displayed courage and capability that saved lives. You have my personal thanks and the thanks of everyone here. The hall erupted in applause. Not mocking this time, genuine. Hana sat down, overwhelmed. Ji-won hugged her. Other students nearby nodded respectfully. After the assembly, Hana went to the observation deck. The stars looked different now. She had proven something important, not just to the others, but to herself. How are you not afraid? A voice asked. She turned to see a younger student, barely out of adolescence. One of the many she had helped save. Who says I'm not afraid? Hana replied. I'm terrified most of the time. But you still do it. You still go into danger. Hana looked back at the stars. You want to know what humans are? She asked. We're the species that faced extinction over and over. Ice Ages. The Galactic Council arrived 3 days after the rescue ships. They came to investigate the accident and determine if anyone was at fault. Hana was called to testify about her actions during the crisis. The council chamber was impressive. 7 beings from different species sat on a raised platform, each representing a major galactic civilization. At the center was Counselor Dexmar, an ancient creature whose species had existed for thousands of years. His eyes glowed with an inner light as he studied Hana. Miss Hana of Earth, he began, his voice surprisingly gentle. Your actions during the crisis have been noted. But I have questions. The maintenance protocols you used, the engineering solutions you implemented, these required knowledge your species should not possess. The systems were designed by Vrax engineers using principles unknown to Earth. How did you know what to do? Hana stood straight, though her heart raced. I recognized the patterns. Humans are good at understanding broken systems. We've had practice. Dexmar leaned forward. Practice? Explain. Earth is broken many times, Hana said simply. We learn to fix things when they fail. The council members exchanged glances. One of them, a Quillan representative, spoke up. We have reviewed Earth's public records. They show a peaceful world with standard development. Nothing that would explain your capabilities. Then you haven't seen the full records. Hannah replied quietly. After the testimony ended, Myra found Hannah in the library. The Quillen student's crystalline body chimed softly as she approached. I need to understand something, Myra said. I have accessed all available data on Earth. The public files show a standard garden world with normal evolutionary development. But your actions suggest a different history. The way you problem solve, your approach to crisis situations, your endurance. None of it matches the official records. Hannah looked at her for a long moment. What do you want to know? The truth, Myra said. What is Earth really like? Hannah made a decision. She led Myra to a restricted section of the library and used her access codes to open the sealed files. Myra's eyes widened. How did you get that clearance? My government gave it to me before I left, Hannah explained. They knew people would ask questions eventually. They wanted me to be able to answer them. She activated the holographic display. Images filled the air around them. The first image showed Earth during an ice age. Vast glaciers covered continents. Small groups of primitive humans huddled in caves, barely surviving in a frozen world. 70,000 years ago, a supervolcano nearly made humans extinct, Hannah began. The human population dropped to less than 10,000 individuals. The world was covered in ash. Plants died. Animals died. But humans survived. More images appeared. Plagues sweeping through cities. Wars with weapons that could destroy entire civilizations. Environmental collapse. Asteroids striking the planet. We faced extinction 14 times in our recorded history alone, Hannah continued. Ice ages, pandemics that killed billions, nuclear weapons that could have ended all life on our planet, environmental disasters, solar radiation events. Each time, we came close to the end. Each time, we found a way to survive. Myra watched in silence. Her usual confident demeanor cracked as she saw the scope of human suffering. Your species went through this? She asked quietly. All of this? Every human alive today is descended from survivors, Hannah said. We carry that heritage in our genes. We're small because we had to survive with limited resources. We're weak because we couldn't rely on physical strength. We had to use our minds, our creativity, our refusal to give up. She pulled up more data. We don't have claws, so we made tools. We don't have thick scales, so we made armor. We're not the fastest, so we learned persistence hunting. We would chase prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. We don't stop. That's what makes us human. Myra processed this information, her analytical mind working through the implications. The endurance trial. Union's trial. You collapsed at kilometer 35. But given your physiology and the conditions, you should have failed at kilometer 15. How did you make it that far? Because compared to Earth's history, that trial was easy, Hannah replied. My ancestors walked hundreds of kilometers through ice and snow to find food. They survived in deserts without water for days. They crossed oceans in primitive boats, knowing they might die. A 50-kilometer march in a simulator? That's nothing. She showed images of human achievements. Ancient humans crossing frozen land bridges to populate new continents. Explorers sailing into unknown waters. Astronauts riding chemical rockets into space before they even had proper shielding. We went to space knowing we might die, Hannah said. We did it anyway because we wanted to see what was out there. That's humanity. We see something impossible, and we try it. If we fail, we learn and try again. Myra was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. I mocked you. I called your species weak and illogical. I was wrong. You measured us by physical standards, Hannah said. That's not wrong. By those standards, we are weak. But there are other ways to measure strength. Word spread through the academy like wildfire. Myray, unable to keep such significant information to herself, shared what she had learned. Students began researching Earth with new interest. Taiyang found records of human warfare. He stood in the library, staring at images of ancient battlefields, nuclear explosions, and historical conflicts. They fought wars for centuries, he muttered to himself. They had weapons that could destroy their entire planet. And they didn't use them. He looked up from the display, his expression troubled. How did they show that much restraint? Ji-won discovered human exploration history. She watched footage of early space missions, primitive rockets exploding on launch pads, astronauts dying in training accidents. But more humans kept volunteering. They went to space in chemical rockets, she said to her friends. With no shields? One malfunction and they die instantly. Why would anyone do that? Another student answered, because they're curious. They want to see what's beyond their world, even if it kills them. Other students found records of human endurance. Marathon runners, deep-sea divers, mountain climbers, people who pushed their bodies to absolute limits for no reason except to see if they could. They climb mountains for fun, one student said, bewildered. They run until their bodies break down. They dive to depths that should kill them. And they do it voluntarily. The mockery stopped completely. It was replaced by something else. Caution, respect, and for some, fear. A group of younger students approached Hannah one day in the cafeteria. They asked if they could sit with her. She said yes. Is it true? One asked. Did Earth really have 14 extinction events? Yes, Hannah confirmed. And humans survived all of them? We're here, aren't we? The students exchanged glances. You're not weak, another said. You're terrifying. Hannah smiled sadly. We're not trying to be scary. We're just trying to survive. That evening, she recorded a message to send home to Earth. The communication lag meant her family wouldn't receive it for weeks. But she needed to tell them what was happening. Mom. Dad. Daehan? She said into the camera. Things are changing here. The other students are starting to understand what we are. What we survived to get here. They're not laughing anymore. Some of them look at me differently now. Like I'm dangerous. She paused, collecting her thoughts. I don't want them to be afraid of us. I want them to understand that we're survivors. We've been through hell and came out stronger. We're not weak, and we're not going to pretend to be. She ended the recording and went to the observation deck. More students were there than usual. They made space for her without being asked. Taiyang approached her. I've been thinking about what you said. About humans being dangerous, not because you're strong, but because you never give up. And? Hannah asked. The Academy is announcing a new competition. The Trials of Krevthur. It's an ancient challenge where teams face the galaxy's most dangerous scenarios. The best teams compete. The winner gets the highest honors in the Academy. Sounds intense, Hannah said. I want you on my team, Taiyang said. He looked uncomfortable admitting it. I was wrong about you. I thought strength meant size and power. But I watched you save our lives with nothing but determination and smart thinking. That's strength too. Before Hannah could respond, Murray stepped forward. I also want you on my team. Your problem-solving capabilities are exceptional. Other students nearby called out their own offers. Suddenly, Hannah wasn't the weak alien everyone mocked. She was the human everyone wanted. She looked at Taiyang and Myray. These two had been her harshest critics. Now they wanted her help. All right, she said. Let's form a team. Let's show this academy what a human can really do. Taiyang extended his massive clawed hand. Hannah took it with her small, weak, human hand. The handshake felt like the beginning of something important. Around them, other students watched with new eyes. The strange alien girl wasn't a joke anymore. She was a survivor from a planet of survivors. And everyone was starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, humans were the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Not because they were strong, but because they absolutely refused to give up. The trials of Krevthur began on a cold morning. 12 teams stood in the grand arena, each representing the best students the Academy had to offer. Hannah stood with her team, Taiyang, Mireille, Jiwan, and 2 other skilled students named Sunwoo and Yuna. They wore matching uniforms. And for the first time since arriving at the Academy, Hannah felt like she belonged. The Academy commander stood at the center of the arena. The trials of Krevthur have tested warriors for 3,000 years. You will face scenarios designed to break the strongest beings. Only one team will emerge victorious. Begin. The first trial transported all teams to a simulated burning world. The planet's surface reached 800 degrees. Volcanic eruptions filled the air with toxic ash. The task was simple: retrieve an ancient artifact from the center of the wasteland and return alive. Most teams struggled immediately. The heat was overwhelming, even with protective suits. The Vraks, built for hot climates, had an advantage. But even they couldn't move quickly in these conditions. Hannah studied the environment. The direct path to the artifact crossed exposed lava fields. That's where most teams went, using brute force and heavy shielding to push through. "We're not taking the direct route," she told her team. "But that's the fastest way," Taiyang argued. "Fast doesn't matter if we burn out," Hannah replied. She pointed to a series of rock formations that created natural shade. "We use those for cover. We move during the volcanic cycles when the air is clearer. And we make reflective shields from the metallic debris around us." "That's unnecessarily complex," Mireille said. "But it will work," Hannah insisted. "Trust me." They followed her plan. While other teams exhausted themselves fighting the heat directly, Hannah's team moved efficiently through the shadows. She taught them to use the environment instead of fighting it. When they reached the artifact, 3 other teams had already arrived, but those teams were exhausted. Hannah's team was still fresh. They secured the artifact and finished second. The second trial was underwater. Teams had to navigate crushing depths to retrieve data cores from a sunken structure. Species with aquatic adaptations dominated early, but the pressure was extreme even for them. Hannah shouldn't have survived. Human bodies weren't built for those depths. But she had studied Earth's deep-sea environments and knew the principles. She calculated pressure, differentials, and created makeshift diving equipment from the emergency supplies. Her smaller size became an advantage in the tight spaces of the sunken structure. While larger team members struggled to fit through collapsed orders, Hannah slipped through easily. "There's a gap here," she called to her team. "I can reach the data core. You'll be crushed," Yuna warned. "Not if I'm quick," Hannah replied. She squeezed through a space barely wider than her shoulders, retrieved the core, and returned before her oxygen ran out. Her team finished first. Other teams stared in disbelief. But the real test came with the third trial. The strategic war. All 12 teams were placed in a massive battlefield simulation. The scenario was brutal. Defend the colony against overwhelming enemy forces for 36 hours until reinforcements arrived. Most teams would fail within the first 12 hours based on historical data. The teams organized their defenses. Most chose strong positions with heavy fortifications. They planned to meet the enemy with superior firepower and hold their ground through strength. Hannah had different ideas. "We're not holding ground," she told her team during the planning phase. "What?" Taiyang looked shocked. "That's the entire point of the trial." "No," Hannah corrected. The point is to survive 36 hours. We don't have to fight the traditional way. We fight the human way. She explained her strategy. It was unlike anything the others had seen. Guerrilla tactics, hit and run attacks, psychological warfare, misdirection, exhaustion strategies. Mireille analyzed the plan. This is highly unconventional. The probability of success is difficult to calculate. That's because you're trying to apply traditional military logic, Hannah said. But humans learn to fight differently. We learn to win against superior forces by being unpredictable. The trial began. The enemy forces were massive, well-armed, and numerous. They advanced on all positions. For the first 6 hours, Hannah's team appeared to retreat constantly. They gave up ground, fell back, avoided direct confrontation. Other teams watching through the monitors mocked them. The human is running again, someone laughed. Typical. But Hannah wasn't running. She was setting traps, drawing the enemy deeper into unfavorable terrain. Exhausting their resources. By hour 12, the enemy had overextended. They were spread thin, chasing what they thought was a weak opponent. That's when Hannah struck. Her team hit supply lines. They ambushed isolated units. They created chaos in enemy communications. Small victories that added up. They're not fighting us head-on, the enemy commander in the simulation said, frustrated. Where are they? By hour 24, the tide had turned. The enemy was scattered, confused, and making mistakes. Hannah's team rotated members in shifts, keeping everyone fresh while the enemy grew exhausted. How are you doing this? Taiyang asked during a brief rest. He was amazed at how well the strategy worked. Because humans fought wars that lasted years, Hannah explained. We learned that you don't win by being strongest. You win by outlasting your opponent, by being smarter, by making them defeat themselves. The final 12 hours were intense. The enemy, realizing they were losing, threw everything at Hannah's team. But by then, it was too late. The team had divided their forces, isolated their units, and destroyed their morale. When the reinforcements arrived at hour 36, Hannah's team had already won. The colony stood intact. Enemy forces were scattered and broken. The silence in the viewing hall was absolute. Other teams had failed within hours. Hannah's team had survived the entire trial and won decisively. Admiral Krexvor, a legendary Vrax commander who had fought in 100 wars, reviewed the battle footage personally. He stood before the assembled academy, his ancient eyes focused on Hannah. In all my centuries of warfare, I have never seen strategy like this, he said. Where did you learn these tactics? Hannah stepped forward. From human history, Admiral. We call it the Vietnam strategy, the guerrilla doctrine, the Fabian strategy. Humans have fought thousands of wars against superior forces. We learned that you don't win by being strongest. You win by being smartest, most persistent, and most adaptable. She looked around at all the watching students. You laughed at me because I'm small, weak, fragile. But humans didn't become the dominant species on our planet by being the biggest or strongest. We became dangerous because we never give up. We learn, we adapt. We find ways to survive when there shouldn't be any. The Admiral nodded slowly. I understand now. Humanity is not weak. Humanity is terrifying in ways I had not considered. One final trial remained. Single combat. Champions from each of the top 3 teams would face each other. Hannah's opponent was Cuban, the same Vrax who had defeated her in 15 seconds at the beginning of the year. He was still bigger, stronger, and faster. Nothing had changed about their physical capabilities, but everything else had changed. The fight began. Cuban charged forward with overwhelming force, just like before. But this time, Hannah was ready. She didn't try to match his strength. She dodged, using his momentum against him. She targeted joints and weak points with precise strikes. "Stand still and fight," Cuban growled. "Why?" Hana replied, ducking under his claws. "This is fighting." 5 minutes passed. 10 minutes. 15. Cuban was strong, but Hana was patient. She let him exhaust himself while she conserved energy. Every move she made was calculated. Efficient. 20 minutes. Cuban's breathing became labored. His strikes grew slower. 30 minutes. He was gasping for air. Hana was tired too, bleeding from several cuts, but she maintained her pace. At 43 minutes, Cuban collapsed to one knee, completely exhausted. Hana stood over him, barely able to stand herself, but still standing. "Yield?" she asked quietly. Cuban looked up at her. There was no shame in his eyes, only respect. "I yield." The arena erupted in cheers. Hana's team rushed forward to support her as she nearly collapsed. She had done it. She had won. The Galactic Council presented the award ceremony. Hana's team stood on the podium as champions of the trials of Krefthur. Admiral Krexver personally placed the medal around Hana's neck. "I was wrong about your species," he said quietly. "I thought humans were weak because they lack physical advantages. I now understand that you're dangerous precisely because you lack those advantages. You were forced to become smarter, more adaptable, more determined. That makes you formidable warriors." He stepped back and addressed the entire academy. "Let this be a lesson. The Galactic Council formally recognizes humanity not as a weak species, but as a uniquely dangerous one. Dangerous not through strength, but through indomitable will." After the ceremony, students surrounded Hana with questions. They wanted to know about Earth, about human history, about how her species survived so much. Taiyang approached her pridedly. "I mocked you when you first arrived. I called you weak. I was blind. Forgive me." "You're forgiven," Hana said. "Now you know what humans are. Tell others." Myre presented her findings to the xenobiology department. Humans should be studied not as weak specimens, but as master adapters. They represent a unique evolutionary path that,